My name is Joy Loverde. I am based in Chicago, Illinois, United States, and I am 70 years old. And here's my story. So I went to an all-girls Catholic high school, and I'm sitting there minding my own business as a freshman, brand new. And Sister Dorothy marches in the room and she says, "Who's going to go to the nursing home with me on Thanksgiving morning?" Oh, I raised my hand. You see, what I was looking for was a little extra credit. But what I got on that Thanksgiving morning was what I would be doing for the rest of my life. So Sister Dorothy and I went to visit the nursing home, and when we walked in, there were 7 people sitting in the dark. It's Thanksgiving morning. I cannot understand this. I'm 14 years old. I don't know why these people are alone. Where is their family? Why are they not talking to each other? Why do they look so sad? And I made a fundamental agreement with myself that something must be done to make sure that no one is alone in their old age. Years went by, and I continued my tradition, my personal tradition of going to nursing homes, especially on Thanksgiving morning. But that was not enough for me. What I decided to do was create a way for people to begin the process of talking to each other. And so my first book came out called The Complete Eldercare Planner. The mission of this book is to get people to talk to each other so that they're never alone in old age. But 10 years ago, something very interesting happened. I have been on the road for 30 years with the first book, when little by little people came up to me and would say, "I am doing this for my parents. I am taking care of my parents, but who will take care of me when I'm old?" And then I knew right away that that would be my second book. Who will take care of me when I'm old? So now we've come full circle. We are taking care of the family caregivers. We are taking care of people who are aging solo. We are taking care of each other. And I am an advocate for people everywhere as they age. And that's my story.
Wow, Joy, what an amazing vocation you picked.
Our God picked it, Gertrude. I
Um,
did not pick it. I fell in love with those people when I went to the nursing home as a 14-year-old, and I have never looked back.
I mean, you were so young, but to sense the sadness and the loneliness is really the driving force that got you to do what you're doing, correct?
Yes, because there was a contrast in what I knew as a young person. So I was going on Thanksgiving morning, I was going home to a house full of people. I am Italian. So we have music and food and dogs and babies and all kinds of activity, lots of noise, a very noisy Italian house. And so me walking into this situation where no music and no one's talking and no one is happy, that was not okay with me, even at the age of 14 years old.
Wow. Wow. I remember my first experience when I moved to the UK. I was 19 and I lived in the street, and an elderly woman died 2 houses away from my apartment. And they only found out she was dead because the milkman kept leaving the milk bottles outside her door, and they accumulated over 2 weeks. And I remember at the time thinking, nobody should die alone. So I'm from Africa, very much like the family you've just described. A house is always full of people, full of family, friends, relatives, and the elderly especially are revered.
Mm.
You never die alone. You are surrounded by people. And even if you don't have children of your own, the community take care of you. So that was my first big culture shock, coming out of Africa, living in London, and just seeing the loneliness that was there. So you obviously took this on. Like you said, you were chosen to do this work. If you were to go back to that younger you and have a conversation with that little girl, based on what life has taught you, what three nuggets of wisdom would you share with her? Just in case there's a young person trying to decide what to do with their career.
I would say, don't second guess what you know is true. Even if people around you are perhaps questioning your line of thinking. So, number one, if you love something, don't worry if others don't get it. The other thing, another nugget of wisdom, if you want to call it that, is it takes a long time for it to define itself, whatever it is. So you may know you love something very much, but you may not know how it will manifest in your life. It may become a job or it may not become a job, but nobody will ever be able to take away whatever it is you're feeling is important at your young age. So just hang on to that. And thirdly, and this is true for me as my age now, but as a 14-year-old, I don't know how I knew to do this, but I knew to ask for help immediately. I did not take this journey alone. I was constantly in the presence of old people and I would ask them a zillion questions. I was in the presence of professionals and experts, and I never hesitated to ask them, what do you think about this? What would you do if you were me? And so that is my third thing, is surround yourself with people of all kinds, of all ages, and ask them questions to help you get where you want to go.
Wow, they actually say that curiosity, or people who ask questions, are very intelligent. They're not scared to show their ignorance. They want to know more. They're like sponges. They take in information. So it's actually a good thing to ask questions if you're not sure of anything. Now,
Yes.
you wrote this incredible book, and a lot of people don't really plan for that later part of their lives. We know it's coming, it's like death, but we want to keep it as far away from us as possible.
So let me jump right in here. When we say the word care, okay? Here's the good thing. Here's the good news. As we grow older, it is not a given that we will need care. It's not a given that we will be sick. It is a given that we will be a living, breathing human being that will have other needs. So we will have physical needs, maybe, but it's not a given. We will have intellectual needs and emotional needs and social needs and spiritual needs. So if we're lucky enough to go toward old age without really being sick, and by the way, that's the way my mother was. She died in her sleep at 92, hardly sick ever in her life. So she's my role model. But what she had and what we all need to strive for is everything else. People around us, socializing, a spiritual life, whatever you want to call spirituality, and then the intellectual curiosity, as you called it. So we could nurture those. And my book is about all four aspects, not just care like being sick, because that's not a given.
I love that. I absolutely love it. So that curiosity should transcend into your old age as well. It's not just you as a child. You have to keep your brain stimulated, motivated, new information going in at all times. I absolutely love it. One of the things that I took up when I turned 50 was tango, because I heard that when you dance, it does help rewire the neurons in your brain. So every Wednesday, my husband and I, we go and dance, and it's really become quite a fun thing to do. You shouldn't just give up on life just because you've reached a certain age.
Yeah, so you bring up a good point because we have to think about where we want to live. You mentioned you have a husband, but so many people are aging alone. And so it's important to say, how is it that I could stay connected? So I always caution people when they say, I want to stay in my home for as long as possible, because if it gets to the point where nobody comes to visit, you will be isolated, and that's not a good thing.
That is so true. That isolation is something that you actually want to avoid. So, is there a step-by-step process that one should think about when they start nearing retirement? I'm going to share the banner with your website in case there's somebody out there who's planning retirement as an elderly parent. They can be able to get hold of you. So give us that step-by-step process.
Okay, I'll give you the top 3 things to plan for, because there's so it one of the reasons, Gertrude, that people do not plan is because it's overwhelming. So I'm going to narrow it down to the top 3. The first one is money. How are we going to finance a longer life? Now, I always like to tell people that we need to finance our quality of life. What is it going to take to have what we want for as long as we want it? So, number 1 is get your money house in order. Now, if you're a caregiver and you don't know about your parents' financial well-being, you're going to have to figure out a way to get them to trust you to say, okay, mom and dad, how are we going to do this? How do you plan to pay for your old age? So if you don't have much of a relationship with your parents, don't expect them to start talking to you about their money, because that's the last thing they're going to do. So you have to think about that first. And my book has a lot of tips on communicating. So number 1, financing a longer life. Number 2 is what I already mentioned, housing. Where do you want to live? Now, when we think about that, we really do need to think about living in a community setting. Even if we live in our own homes, we can think about living as in a village or a tribal situation, something where people are checking in with each other and we're getting together socially. And of course, being the Italian that I am, we have to have dinner together, right? So the first is money, the second is housing, and the third very important tip for planning for a longer life is getting your paperwork in order. And by that, I mean making sure that you have the legal documents, you're prepared to give someone power of attorney, and you in turn are the power of attorney for someone else, which means we give each other, people we trust, the decision-making power should we become incapacitated. Now, none of this stays in place once we die. So that's not the planning. The planning is what happens if we don't die? What happens if we are incapacitated, we can't speak what we want? We have to have people around us that we have given permission to say, help me make decisions, do it in my behalf. But of course, these legal documents have to be integrated far before we need them, and while we have the mental capacity to do it with someone we trust. Very, very important. So there you go. Money, housing, and legal documents. Now, how easy is that? right?
It sounds simple. It sounds simple.
It
You
is.
say it that way.
Well, that's my job. I don't want people, most of the time, people don't do it because they're just overwhelmed.
Yeah. And
It's all.
it is easy to go into overwhelm because there is a lot of things there that need to be taken into consideration. But what you're saying is when you can still have the capacity to make the choices,
Yes.
this is the time to do it, correct?
Yes, I always advise people to get to work with the professionals. So a financial planner or an attorney. Very important. Don't go it alone. And there, in at least in the United States, and I'm sure all over the world, there are places you could go to get free legal advice, free financial advice. People will be willing to help you with this, and it doesn't cost an arm and a leg. You just need to know. Ask around. Boy, I'm like the one that asked everybody, how did you do what you did? Who helped you? How did you find this wonderful resource? Was it expensive? Do you know another way to do it? I mean, it's just, people are such a wonderful resource, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That
It's
is so true.
I learned
Wow.
so much from everybody. And I don't know, have you ever heard of the concept of critical thinking?
Yes.
I love critical
Mhm.
thinking and what that means for anybody who may not know. And I didn't know about it either until I wrote my second book. Critical thinking is getting out of the box and not being afraid to ask questions. But what I mean by getting out of the box is start talking to people who are nothing like you. Talk to people who are really old, talk to people who are really young, talk to different cultures, find out, ask questions. Here's my situation. What would you do if you were me? And one of my most trusted advisors is my 7-year-old granddaughter. She helps me out a lot, and she's so honest, and so critical thinking is a really good way to plan for the future because you're going to get all kinds of ideas and all kinds of wonderful advice.
I love it. So let's end our interview with this question. If time was an illusion and your past, your present, your future could exist in the same timeline, and I could take you forward to the future you're now 120, with science being what it is, you'll probably live that long if your grandmother lived to 92. If you could have a conversation with that woman based on how you've lived your life, what would you say to her?
Didn't you have a great time? Didn't you just do it all? I'm so proud of you. You never held back. You were always brave. And for that I thank you because you loved so hard. You played so hard. You worked so hard. And so sleep, baby, sleep.
That is beautiful. That is beautiful to be able to come to the end of your life and thank yourself for having lived a full life. I can feel that you will exit this earth with no juices left at all.
No, I sure won't. I just say yes to everything, and I just advise everyone. This is the only life we've got. Just love so hard. Just love.
We have one life. Thank you so much, Joy. This has been an absolute honor and a pleasure to
Thank you.
meet you and to share you with our community. Lots of food for thought, everybody. You have the time and the choice to decide what the end days will look like. So plan it. So, Joy, you have a second book that
Yes.
helps people plan for their elder years, correct?
Yes. So yes. Who will take care of me when I'm old? And remember, care is all about everything, not just physical.
Fantastic. Have a fantastic day, everybody, or evening or morning, wherever you are in the world. I'll be back again tomorrow with yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, take care and bye for now. Thank you, Joy, for this interview.
Thank you so much.